I was the secret lover of a business tycoon, a temporary replacement for a role that was never meant to be mine. Edward Sterling was a busy man. So busy, in fact, that our intimate encounters usually occurred at 2 or 3 in the morning. The room would be pitch black, the heavy curtains drawn tight against the city lights, leaving him no chance to discover who I really was. 2 months later, I returned to the gilded cage of the nightclub where I worked as the top host. Just as I was about to lean in and feed a client a drink mouth to mouth, the heavy mahogany doors crashed open. A phalanx of bodyguards in black suits flooded the room, and a second later, Edward paced in. His face, usually so composed, was dark with a terrifying rage, half obscured by a medical muzzle used to control pheromones. His voice was a low growl that vibrated in my chest as he said, "If I had known you were this bold, Gabriel, I would have finished you off in that bed." It all started in a private VIP box at the Royal Kairos Club. Lucas, with tears welling in his doe-like eyes, shook my arm with desperate strength. "Gabriel, please, you have to help me," he pleaded, his voice trembling. "I don't want to regret this for the rest of my life." Lucas was the youngest son of the Langston family. Due to a severe financial crisis, the Langstons had decided to marry him off to the eldest son of the Sterling Empire to save their teetering enterprise. But Lucas had already given his heart to someone else, a mixed-race roommate named Julian whom he had met while studying abroad. "I want to be brave and pursue love just this once," Lucas cried, sniffing loudly. "But my dad is insisting I go and bond with my fiancée. Gabriel, your pheromones smell exactly like mine. Just take my place for 2 months. Please." Lucas looked at me with those beautiful, tear-filled eyes, and I frowned, hesitating. "But haven't you and your fiancée met before?" I asked, skepticism lacing my tone. "I've heard rumors about the Langston-Sterling marriage. I heard you and Edward Sterling were childhood friends." Lucas shook his head vigorously, his curls bouncing. "Don't worry about that. We only met once when we were practically babies. He definitely won't remember me now. Listen, whether I manage to win Julian over or not, I will come back and take responsibility for everything. I'm begging you." I ran a hand through my hair, agitated. To put it bluntly, I was a mercenary escort who cared only about profit. I shouldn't be getting mixed up in the messy lives of the rich and desperate. But Lucas was the exception. He had helped me when no one else would. I let out a long, resigned sigh. "What do I have to do?" Hope exploded in Lucas's eyes like fireworks. He immediately pulled out his phone to forward me the address. "It's not hard," he assured me breathlessly. "Just live at his house for a while. That's it." The next day, I arrived at the destination dragging a small, battered suitcase. I stood before the low-key yet undeniably luxurious villa, staring at the 2 imposing Dobermans standing guard at the gate. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. Lucas's warning echoed in my mind. Edward is moody, unpredictable, and ruthless. Do not provoke him. We just need to survive until I get back. Gabriel, wait for me. I squeezed my eyes shut, took a deep breath, and resigned myself to my fate. I dragged my luggage forward, the wheels clicking rhythmically on the pavement. Soon, under the guidance of the elderly butler, Alfred, I was led to the master bedroom on the 2nd floor, or rather, the room opposite it. I expected Alfred to lecture me on the strict rules of the Sterling household, but he merely gave a few polite instructions and left. Judging by the cold reception, Edward seemed entirely uninterested in this arranged union. I collapsed onto the soft mattress, letting out a heavy breath. As long as Edward kept his distance, I could get out of this unscathed. My guess proved correct. For the next few days, Edward was a ghost. He never appeared. Just as I was beginning to let my guard down, the atmosphere shifted. It was late at night, the grandfather clock in the hall ticking past 11. I walked slowly out of my room, towel drying the ends of my hair and holding a laundry basket against my hip. Suddenly, the screech of tires braking on the gravel driveway shattered the silence. Before I could react, a tall, imposing figure appeared in the living room below. I froze on the landing, staring down. Even in the dim light, his presence was overwhelming. If I wasn't mistaken, this was Edward Sterling. The living room was lit only by a single floor lamp, casting long, sharp shadows. Edward leaned back against the sofa, his brow furrowed with a fatigue that seemed bone deep. I hesitated for a moment, then crept downstairs as quietly as a cat. As I got closer, the thick, pungent smell of alcohol assaulted my nose. I frowned, concerned despite myself, and moved to check on his condition. Suddenly, my wrist was seized in a grip of iron and twisted painfully. "Damn it," I yelled, unable to hold back the cry. "Pain. That hurts." In the dim light, Edward narrowed his eyes, his gaze piercing. "Who are you?" he demanded, his voice rough with drink and suspicion. My right wrist felt like it was being crushed. I wanted to cry, but I forced the words out. "I'm from the Langston family." The moment the words left my lips, Edward threw my hand away as if I were something filthy. He clenched his jaw, his expression darkening. "Get out." I stared at him in disbelief. Was this how he treated his fiancée? I rubbed my throbbing wrist, muttering a curse internally. Asterisk, he wants me to get out? Fine. Asterisk, I turned on my heel, marched upstairs, and slammed the door shut. Once inside, I punched the air, venting my fury. "Edward Sterling, you pretentious jerk," I hissed. I pulled out my phone, ready to send a ranting text to Lucas, when a knock sounded at the door. It hadn't even been 5 minutes. I opened it to find Alfred standing there. "Young Master Langston, is it convenient for you now?" the butler asked politely. At midnight, for reasons unknown, Edward's mood had apparently swung again. Alfred stood guard with a pleasant smile while I stood in the kitchen, face full of resentment, stirring a pot. "Alfred, the hangover soup is ready," I said, trying to keep the annoyance out of my voice. The butler took the bowl with a bow. "Thank you for your hard work." I let out a dry, hollow laugh. "It's not hard work. I just pray Edward treats the elderly with a bit more kindness than he does his fiancée." After cleaning up the mess, I yawned and trudged back to my room. I didn't expect anything to come of it, but early the next morning, Alfred handed me a black card with gold lettering. "Mr. Sterling liked the taste of the hangover soup very much," Alfred explained. "This card is a token of his gratitude." Evil capitalist, I thought, pinching the cold metal of the black card between my fingers. But money was money. Suddenly, I remembered something. "Alfred, have you seen my laundry basket?" Edward was so rude last night, I was too busy being angry and forgot to bring it back up. The butler looked apologetic. "I am terribly sorry. The maids accidentally ruined the clothes while washing them. We will have new ones sent to you shortly." I waved my hands frantically. No, it's fine. My clothes aren't worth anything anyway." I turned to go back to my room to continue my life as a parasite, but Alfred reached out to stop me, a hesitant look on his face. "Young master, the madam wants to see you." My smile froze instantly. Wait, Lucas never mentioned anything about meeting the parents. The Sterling family estate was hidden in the bustling city center, a massive, traditional courtyard house that whispered of old money and history. I followed the old butler through a labyrinth of corridors until we finally reached the ancestral hall. Rumor had it that Edward's mother was obsessed with feng shui and astrology. They said that when she gave birth to Edward, the time of the C-section was calculated down to the second. I pressed my lips together and stepped into the room. "Good afternoon, Madam Sterling." Edward's mother beamed, rushing forward to pull me by the arm. "I finally looked forward to meeting my daughter-in-law," she exclaimed. I gave a stiff, awkward smile and stayed silent. She looked me up and down, seeming more satisfied by the second. "Lucas, my dear," she cooed. "Edward has a terrible temper. We just hope for a sensible, obedient partner who can go along with him." She patted the back of my hand affectionately. "Your astrological charts are the most compatible match in the entire city. You two will surely have a long life together." I forced the corners of my mouth up, feigning curiosity. "Madam, how exactly do you read these charts?" Seeing my interest, she lit up. She pulled out a yellowed notebook filled with complex diagrams. "Look here. Marriage compatibility mainly depends on the 5 elements, the relationship between the heavenly stems and earthly branches, and the influence of spiritual stars." Strange vocabulary swirled in my head, but I perked up and put on a coquettish tone. "Madam, could you calculate one for me? Just use Edward's chart and—" I paused for a second, my eyes darting around, before rattling off my own real birth date and time without batting an eyelid. "Ideally, I don't care if I match with Edward," I thought. "I just want to see whose life is harder if we end up in a conflict when the truth comes out." Mrs. Sterling performed the calculation quickly. Her brow furrowed deeply. Lucas, whose birth date is this? This person carries a star of calamity. They are absolutely unworthy of Edward. She immediately burned the paper with the date on it, her face turning grim. Stay away from this person in the future, she commanded, her voice dripping with unmasked desire for control. My expression faltered for a moment. Realizing she had lost her composure, Mrs. Sterling quickly put her smile back on. By the way, I heard your pheromone scent is orange. Can I smell it? My palms instantly began to sweat. Mrs. Sterling was an omega too, and omegas had the most sensitive sense of smell. Even the slightest difference could be detected. I pursed my lips, slowly peeling off the inhibitor patch on the back of my neck. Instantly, the fresh scent of citrus filled the air. Mrs. Sterling narrowed her eyes, inhaling gently. Your pheromones. They are different from the data we received. My heart clenched tight. Is that so? Yes, she murmured thoughtfully. The citrus scent is mixed with a wisp of wine. The smell is much richer, more mellow. She looked up, her smile widening into something genuine. This is wonderful. Edward loves fruit wine. He will definitely like you. Thinking of Edward's hostility the previous night, I laughed awkwardly. I hope so. My time at the old estate passed quickly. Just as Mrs. Sterling was insisting I stay for dinner, a servant approached. Madam, the young master says he will be having dinner with young Master Langston tonight. He won't be eating here. Mrs. Sterling, delighted by this news, sent me off. I sat in the back seat of the car, staring blankly out the window. What is Edward planning now? I pulled out my phone, typing so fast my thumbs were a blur. What do I do? Edward wants to have dinner with me. According to the plan, we weren't supposed to meet for 2 months. Lucas replied quickly. I could tell he was just as shocked. Holy crap. Those rich guys all said Edward was frigid. How did you manage to spark his interest? I squeezed my eyes shut, grinding my teeth as I typed back. Give me some advice. If he asks me about the Langston family business and I don't know anything, I'm exposed. A moment later, Lucas sent a message. I'll try something. Just hold on. I looked up at the sky and sighed. Lucas, you better hurry back. I didn't know what strings Lucas pulled, but soon Alfred informed me. Young Master Langston, Mr. Sterling has been delayed by company business. He asked that you dine first. I breathed a sigh of relief, remembering to stay in character. Oh, that is such a pity. That night, the clock struck 12, and Edward still hadn't returned. I congratulated myself on dodging a bullet. Before going to sleep, I sent my routine check-in message to Lucas. 55 days remaining. Return ASAP. I turned off the night light, snuggling comfortably into the duvet, praying Lucas's pursuit of his boyfriend would succeed. Soon, I drifted into a hazy sleep. I slept until a wave of aggressive, overpowering pheromones silently surrounded me. My blood began to scream in warning. I snapped my eyes open to find Edward pressing down on top of me, staring at me with an intensity that bordered on madness. Sensing my intention to reach for the lamp, Edward grabbed my wrist. He leaned in slowly, ripping the inhibitor patch off my neck. His high nose bridge brushed against my gland, sending shivers down my spine. My breath hitched, my voice trembling so softly I feared angering the predator on top of me. Edward, are you in your rut? The scent of cedarwood flooded my nasal cavity, cold, domineering, and intoxicating. Edward, clearly not in his right mind, didn't answer. He simply licked my gland and took a deep, shuddering breath. For half a month, the blackout curtains remained tightly drawn. Edward and I were inextricably linked. We never stepped foot out of that room. The higher the quality of the alpha, the more intense their stamina, and Edward happened to be a prime alpha. As an omega, my instincts were completely drawn out. I remember moments where my vision blurred, my mind holding only one thought. Make this alpha mine alone. Finally, it was Edward who pulled away, gentle yet firm. He whispered against my ear, his voice raspy. Baby, you'll get pregnant. The memory brought me back to reality with a jolt. I pulled the quilt over my head, embarrassed enough to want to bang my head against the wall. Gabriel, you actually let yourself be seduced just like that. Although I reflected on my mistake, for the next few days, when Edward came looking for me at 2 or 3 in the morning, I didn't refuse. Don't ask why. The answer is simple. I enjoyed it. Mrs. Sterling somehow found out about this. She specially sent over tonics and supplements. More than half a month passed, and the Langston family began to sense something was wrong. But fearing the Sterling family's power, they chose silence. So, when I received the message from Lucas, I was chewing on a piece of wild ginseng from the chicken soup. That was an impressive move, Gabriel. I owe you big time. Last 30 days. Wait for me. Edward went on a business trip, scheduled for a month. I let out a long sigh of relief. Finally, I didn't have to experience the friction burns of passion every night. Perhaps because of our intimacy, Edward started reporting his schedule to me. At first, it was formal, meeting, site visit, signing contract with Party B. Later, he started sharing small things. A stray cat by the road. The sunset on the horizon. His tone was still awkward, but the effort was there. In addition, he sent gifts every day. Soon, my room was piled high with expensive items. The outside world took this as confirmation of the loving union between the two families. But I couldn't be happy. According to the original plan, Edward and I were supposed to pass these 2 months as strangers. Now, everything was messy. The day before Edward was due to return, I paced the room anxiously, biting my nails. This was also the final day Lucas had stipulated. Suddenly, my phone vibrated. I opened the chat to see Lucas's excited text. Gabriel. I got him. I slumped with relief. I heard Lucas's roommate was the heir to a noble family in Country S, with industries spanning the globe. He could easily help the Langstons survive their crisis. Since Lucas could now face his family, my job was done. I stared at the chat window with Edward. My heart ached, but I steeled myself. I clicked block and delete. I packed a few clothes. In the dead of night, I snuck over the wall like a thief, leaving the mess behind me and running away. Back at the clubhouse, I intended to rest for a couple of days. But just as I finished washing up, the door crashed open. Harrison Vance, the tall, imposing owner of the club, walked in. His face was thunderous. Gabriel, where the hell have you been? I didn't answer directly. Does an employee need to report their specific whereabouts for a leave of absence? Harrison stared at me darkly. You've grown bold, Gabriel. Boss Vance, I want to rest, I said, shrinking into the blanket and turning off the light without hesitation. I don't know how long passed before his footsteps faded, followed by the heavy slam of the door. I sighed quietly. Suddenly, the blanket was ripped away. A large hand flipped me over. Harrison turned on the light. Still trying to play hard to get? Before the words settled, his hand touched the back of my neck. My gland, usually hidden, was red and swollen, marked by countless bites. Instantly, Harrison's eyes turned bloodshot. Who did this? He hissed, unmasked murderous intent rolling off him in waves. My heart tightened. I pushed him away with all my strength. It's none of your business. Harrison's chest heaved with rage. He pinched my jaw painfully. Gabriel, to put it uglier, you were just my merchandise. I considered our past and didn't force you to do things you didn't like for the last 2 years. But let me tell you, that is not an excuse for you to push your luck. He ripped my shirt open, revealing the love bites that covered my skin. He squeezed my wrist until the bone creaked. Since you're so cheap, rushing to get used by someone else, I'll satisfy you. Gabriel, tomorrow night, you are the headliner. Harrison wasn't joking. He was determined to punish me. I pressed my lips together. Fine. Harrison laughed in anger, threw my hand aside, and stormed out. I lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling. My relationship with Harrison was complicated. I grew up in an orphanage. A fire destroyed it, and after escaping, I fainted on the roadside from smoke inhalation. Harrison Vance, passing by, saved me. There were 2 other survivors. We were all adopted by him. Over the years, he provided us with housing, and we became products of his club, repaying him by selling our looks. I knew Harrison had impure thoughts about me. Under his tacit approval, I had the best of everything and was the only host who didn't have to sell his body. But I had been playing dumb because I couldn't deceive myself. I didn't like him. The party Harrison organized arrived on schedule. Before everyone arrived, I hid in the bathroom. To say I wasn't afraid would be a lie. But the moment I decided to help Lucas, I was prepared for Harrison's retaliation. My phone vibrated in my pocket. Lucas asked where I was. I called off the engagement with Edward Sterling, he wrote. He agreed very quickly. But Edward's expression looked like he wanted to murder someone. I felt faint. The thing I worried about most had happened. But I had to pull myself together. I was in deep trouble myself. Someone banged on the door, rushing me. I put the phone away, missing Lucas's next message. Gabriel, you better hide. Edward is coming for you. As I imagined, Harrison had invited a group of rich, idle playboys who specialized in harassment. Well, isn't this the sweet little Gabriel? One sneered. Usually you can't even touch his hand. Boss Vance is actually willing to let us play with him. Harrison bit down on a cigarette, smiling a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Play however you want. The men exchanged glances and grinned. Soon, someone pinched my face and started pouring wine down my throat. Dirty jokes filled my ears. Within 10 minutes, I was surrounded, hands reaching for me. Harrison sat opposite, quietly watching my humiliation. I knew he was waiting for me to beg him. But I wouldn't. A game ended, and I lost. The penalty: feed someone a drink mouth to mouth. The room erupted in jeers. You can't choose Boss Vance. Harrison's eyes flickered with amusement, as if he were certain I would choose him anyway. After a moment of silence, I picked up the wine glass and turned to a young man in the corner. Excuse me, may I? The boy looked terrified. He was the only one who hadn't touched me. He blushed and stammered. Sure. I stood up and walked toward him. Harrison's face darkened, his hand crushing the glass he held. I sat in front of the boy, holding the wine in my mouth, leaning in slowly. The room went deathly silent. Everyone watched, throats bobbing. Just as our lips were about to touch, the door was kicked open. I jumped, looking toward the entrance. Bodyguards swarmed in, and then Edward strode through the chaos. He stared at the 3-centimeter distance between me and the boy, his voice dripping with ice. If I had known you were this bold, Gabriel, I would have finished you off in that bed. Harrison smashed his wine glass on the floor. He realized who had marked me. He stood up, extinguishing his cigarette with his bare fingers. This is my territory. Who the hell are you to come here and steal people? In seconds, the club's security rushed in. The rich kids fled, afraid of collateral damage, except for the boy in front of me, who shielded me with his body. Don't be afraid. Edward glanced at me, and I shivered instinctively. The air ignited. Harrison and Edward's men clashed violently. The scene descended into chaos. I swallowed hard, trying to sneak away, but a bodyguard Edward had just kicked flying blocked my path. Edward turned his head, his tone chilling. Baby, where do you think you're going? Edward fought brutally, his style efficient and deadly. Soon, Harrison's men were pinned down. While they were distracted, Edward's men grabbed me. Back at the familiar villa, my mood was complicated. I was locked in a guest room, windows sealed, guards at the door. I lay on the bed and sighed heavily. Edward didn't seem to plan on dealing with me tonight. I tossed and turned, unable to sleep. Memories of the orphanage began to flash through my mind. Actually, I had known Edward for a long time. But back then, he didn't have the surname Sterling. When I was 14, I saw him for the first time. People called him Young Master Lee. It was a summer afternoon when he visited the orphanage with the sponsors. He was tall, handsome, and unforgettable. I tried to follow him secretly, but was blocked by older kids demanding protection money. Little bastard, where's this month's fee? The orphanage was poor. I had spent my money on 2 notebooks for school, so I wouldn't be mocked. The bully didn't care. Beat him. Fists rained down on me. I curled up, counting the seconds. Just count to 500, and the pain will stop. Suddenly, the wind shifted. Before I could react, the bully collapsed, cursing as he ran away. I looked up slowly. Standing there, expressionless, was Edward. He walked up to me. I looked away, ashamed of my dirty clothes and the cut on my face. Edward didn't speak. He handed me a tube of ointment and left. I stared at his back, my heart pounding. Years later, I realized I could never find Young Master Lee because I had the wrong name. If I hadn't agreed to Lucas's request, I might never have found him. The next morning, I still couldn't leave. Alfred brought me food. Guilt washed over me for the deception. I'm sorry, Alfred. The butler shook his head gently. You had your reasons. Where is Edward? I asked hesitantly. Alfred paused. The master was injured last night. Is it serious? I stood up, panicked. We don't know yet. His rut has been triggered again. He won't let us in. Alfred sighed deeply. Young Master Gabriel, I have some things to tell you. Please listen before you decide whether to see him. Alfred revealed Edward's past. Mrs. Sterling's superstition had labeled Edward a curse because of his birth time. He was sent to the countryside, adopted by a retired couple, and forced to change his surname to Lee. His mother would force him to drink charm water and endure rituals. I clenched my fists. So that was why he was at that rural orphanage. Abandoned by family, suffering silently. For years, Alfred continued, Edward has been looking for an omega with an orange scent. If I'm not mistaken, that person is you. I froze. Me? Alfred handed me a key. I took it, pressed my lips together, and walked firmly upstairs. I opened the door to the room opposite mine. A fresh scent of fruit wine drifted out. The room was silent. I went in and saw a pile on the bed. He had gathered all the clothes I had left behind, building a nest around himself. I approached the bed and softened my voice. Edward, do you remember me? Edward stared at me darkly. After a long time, he said, I remember. My heart collapsed. Did you recognize me from the beginning? He didn't speak, just wrapped me in his scent. I kicked off my slippers, climbed onto the bed, and stuffed myself into his arms. He froze, then hugged me tightly, burying his face in my neck. Why didn't you tell me? I asked, my voice trembling. I was afraid you would run away again. He muffled into my shoulder. Again? I was confused. I won't run. I'm sorry about the Lucas thing, I whispered. It doesn't matter, he replied instantly. Silence fell. Finally, I whispered, Edward, I like you. Do you like me? He lifted his head, looking confused. We did those things. Didn't we do them because we liked each other? I flushed red. That's different. He nuzzled my face. I like you. I like you very much. Once we cleared the air, Edward became purely romantic, though his behavior remained intense. After coaxing him through his rut for a week, Edward handed me a thick file. I collected this information while I was on my business trip. I opened it and froze. I never expected that Harrison Vance was the one who burned down the orphanage. In this world, omegas were rare, and almost none would voluntarily work as escorts unless they were desperate. So Harrison targeted poor, remote orphanages. He would create a disaster, appear as a savior, and trick the traumatized young omegas into signing slave contracts. I shook with rage. Edward patted my back. I have enough evidence. I'm going to send Harrison to prison. Suddenly, I remembered a detail. Harrison alters the ages of the omegas to make them work sooner. Can you check the records? Edward stiffened. How old are you now? 19, I said. I lied and said I was 2 years older to get the job. Edward exhaled, muttering, good. I almost became a criminal instead of a groom. Edward declared war on Harrison. He ordered bodyguards to protect me 24/7. But within a day, Harrison found a loophole. When I woke up, I was on Harrison's private jet. My hands and feet were bound. Harrison was planning to flee the country. Gabriel, Harrison sneered, blowing cigar smoke in my face. I saw you first. I treated you well. And you ran off with that Sterling kid. He stared at me with venomous eyes. No matter. I'll show you the price of betrayal. I closed my eyes in despair as the plane taxied. Suddenly, the aircraft jolted violently. The cabin door breached. Edward appeared like a wraith, flanked by 2 ex-Special Forces bodyguards. In the blink of an eye, a sedative dart hit Harrison. Edward held a knife to the pilot's throat. Turn around if you want to live. Back on the ground, my legs gave out. Edward caught me. I'm sorry, he sighed. I wanted to get you before takeoff, but I had to hide in the cargo hold. Thank you for saving me, I whispered. He pinched my nose. Saving my wife is my duty. Edward worked tirelessly to ensure Harrison got what he deserved. On the day of the verdict, I went to court. Harrison was sentenced to death for multiple crimes. Many omegas in the gallery wept. To them, he was a benefactor who gave them a life, however twisted. But I looked at the man in the dock, now haggard and broken. He looked at me one last time, a look of final farewell. I walked out of the courthouse into the sunshine where Edward was waiting. Edward, I said, humans are so small. He smiled at me. But love is great. Edward took me to the countryside to meet the couple who raised him. They were kind and warm. Edward has finally found the person who truly loves him, the grandmother said, wiping away tears. Later, Mrs. Sterling demanded we come home. She looked at me with disdain until lunch, when the smell of fish made me rush to the bathroom to vomit. Her eyes went wide. Gabriel, are you pregnant? I covered my mouth, about to deny it, but Edward swept me up into his arms. Excuse us. In the car, I stopped him from driving to the hospital. I'm fine. You were just too rough last night, and I ate too much breakfast. We both blushed, the car falling silent. Lucas called, screaming into the phone. You have a kid. I want to be the godfather. Not yet. I laughed, watching Edward busy in the kitchen. Wait a bit longer. Wait for what? For him to propose. I shook my head, smiling. Of course not. I hung up and set aside my college acceptance letter. I crept up behind Edward and covered his eyes. Guess who? Edward, holding a cocktail shaker, chuckled. That would be my most precious, sweet orange wine. We had found our way back to where we started, but this time, there were no secrets, only a future as bright and warm as the sun.